Right. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, depending on where you are in the world, I suppose it could be evening, it could be morning, and if you're watching the replay, who knows, and probably who cares. This is Graeme Codrington in conversation, and today I am in conversation with a friend. I don't know how long we've known each other, Helen, probably 20 years, if not more, but I'm in conversation today with Helen Nicholson. Helen, how are you handling lockdown, or the easing up of lockdown? We're recording this on the 1st of June when we can all go and line up at liquor stores. Have you got your booze replenished yet today?
No, I have left that. In fact, we did not need booze replenished. I've realized that my self-preservation tendencies have served me well. So, yeah, and I'd rather go later on in the week when kind of the crowd.
Absolutely. I'm not going anywhere near the shops in the next few days. I think it's chaos out there.
We're having our webinar on this day, so that's quite exciting.
It is. We booked it before we knew that it would be the easing up. For those of you who are not from South Africa, South Africa has eased up to a new level of lockdown today. 8 million more people now eligible to go back to work. And we've had a ban on alcohol sales, which has been lifted. So only those of us who had super impressive home stashes of alcohol have survived 9 weeks without the liquor shops open. This country's got an unhealthy connection with liquor, I'm sure. Anyway, you don't want to hear about that. It's great to have you with us. If this is your first time using a webinar jam, you might want to just orientate yourself. If you're on a computer, on the right-hand side, if you're on your phone, then depending on what phone you've got, flick right, flick left, flick up, and you'll find a number of things like the chat box and a few other things. Why don't you just hop over to the chat box and just put your name in there? I see a number of people already saying hello to us and just telling us where they're from. Thank you, that's great. You will have an opportunity to ask us questions. So you can't switch your microphone on, but you can put questions into that chat box as Helen and I are chatting, and we'll watch that and we'll answer your questions and engage with you. So it's really great to have you along for this. As those of you, and I see a few familiar names there, you've been to a few of these in conversation with Graeme Codrington sessions. What I'm trying to do is to say, when we finished our crisis moment, and you're absolutely, there's no judgment about the fact that you needed a crisis moment, whether that moment was a few days or a few weeks. When you finished with it, and you might not be finished yet, but when you are finished with your crisis, what next? So what happens when you realize this COVID thing is not just a few weeks that you can grit your teeth and power through, and then we'll all go back to normal sometime soon. When you realize that actually there's a deep disruption here that may change the world, may change society and politics and economics forever. When you begin to realize that and you begin to shift your mind to say, okay, what does that mean for me, and how do I get the best out of it? I have wanted to chat to a number of people to get their insights from their professional opinion on what it is that we need to do next. And a lot of these people are friends, colleagues that I've met over the years, some of the world's smartest people. And Helen, I can't lie, I do say this to most of the people, that this is the one I've been looking forward to the most. So if you have watched all the other ones, you'll know that I pretty much say that to everybody. But really, Helen, this is one that I have been looking forward to a lot, because I'm not getting this one right. I wish I could come on to this webinar and say, I'm getting mindfulness right. And for those of you who don't know about Helen Nicholson wears a number of different hats. She's one of South Africa's top entrepreneurs and people developers, got a whole lot of feathers in her bow. She's the networking queen of South Africa. But I think more importantly for me, and certainly at this moment, is your emphasis on mindfulness. And I know, Helen, this has been something that you came to during your career. You realized you weren't mindful, and it's made all the difference in your life, in your relationships, in your career. So why don't you start us off by just telling us what is mindfulness. It's a buzzword. I think people think they know what it means. I certainly didn't until you explained it to me. So what is mindfulness, and why do we need it?
So thank you, Graeme. I think there are many definitions out there, but one that I particularly like is that mindfulness is when you bring your brain and your body into the same place at the same time. Because often you might be sitting here now watching this webinar, and we are so driven to multitask around everything. So you're probably on your phone, you may be listening to this in the background, you may be like cooking something, and really I was always the queen of multitasking. And I had two significant moments that led me to my journey of mindfulness, because I was the queen of multitasking. In fact, I even got a job because when they took a reference out of me, they said, she is an excellent multitasker. And I wore that as a badge of honor. And I thought, that was something that was desirable. And what I realized is that our brain is a single processing unit. It's not designed to do three things at the same time. And this constant multitasking that we do, and there's a lot of thought about men and women multitasking. No one can multitask. And really, for me, mindfulness is when you do one thing exceptionally well, and you just do it well, and it makes us happier, and it makes us more productive. So for me, that's what mindfulness, that's a good definition. And my two pivotal moments that led me to this moment was a health scare a couple of years ago. I've skirted on burnout at least probably 3 or 4 times in my career. And I had a moment with my twin daughters around the tooth fairy. So they were 8, they're identical twins, so their big molar teeth fell out, and they went to go and leave their teeth in the slipper waiting for the tooth fairy. And I'm embarrassed to admit is that the tooth fairy, who was obviously me, forgot. And I forgot 4 days in a row. And I'll never forget, on that 5th morning, Sabrina, one of my daughters, came up to me and she put her hand on my arm and she looked up at me with this sad little face. And she said to me, "Mommy, I don't believe in the tooth fairy anymore." And that was when I realized that the quality of life, if any of you have ever watched a black and white movie or had a black and white TV, for me, when you live a mindless life, it's like that black and white movie. And all mindfulness does, it dials the quality of your life up. And it's literally by infinitesimal little notches. So I believe when you live a more mindful life, it's like watching an HD Technicolor TV, because you notice things more. And one of the things I've noticed about this work is largely the quality of our life is not around the big things. It's not around the amazing holidays or the promotions, or those have their place. But largely the quality of your life, and I think this has been especially brought home during this COVID crisis, is that it's the small things. And that's why gratitude is such an important element of being mindful, because that's when you start to notice.
But Helen, surely then in a moment of crisis, so we can come back to talking about after crisis, but for the last 8, 9, 10 weeks, however long it's been, I'm losing count. But in this moment of lockdown, your business is under pressure. If you're a boss, you've got responsibilities towards your team and your clients and your company. If you're an employee and your boss is on your back and you're at home, the kids are at home from school, it's been chaos. Surely mindfulness kind of goes out the window and you just focus on survival. Surely mindfulness is a luxury for kind of when you've got through all of the crisis, or is mindfulness maybe part of how you get through a crisis?
So, I know that you're a runner and I'm a runner, and, we both missed running terribly, I would imagine, during especially that first phase of lockdown. For me, mindfulness is like, it gives me the same benefits that running does. What it does, it gives you bandwidth. So otherwise, rubber hits the road in my day. So I learned to meditate when I was a student, and I did a transcendental meditation class, and that introduced me to mindfulness. But meditation is only one part of mindfulness. It's not the whole shebang. And there's a wonderful quote, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's something around, when you're busy, you should meditate, and when you're really busy, then you should double your meditation. Because it's in times like this that you've got to slow down to reset. And if you have not used, and I'm speaking about you generally, if people have not used this time as a resetting opportunity to just take stock, to sit back, look at what you're happy with, what you're not happy with, and the only way that happens is if you take some time. And because busyness, I think we've worn busyness as a badge of honor. And I think that if anything, the COVID-19 has brought us is that, all the things that we're rushing to go back to, how many of them are actually worth going back to? And for me, you only get that clarity when you practice some kind of mindfulness.
Yeah. That just as a slight aside, I don't want to get sidetracked, but we live in a place where you can hear if the wind is blowing in the right direction, you can hear the motorway. In Johannesburg, it's the M1, it's the main motorway through the middle of the city. And this morning, I kind of woke up to the sound of traffic for the first time in 10 weeks, and I just thought, I work from home normally, which is great. But I just thought, I wonder how many people, maybe today, because if you are going to work for the first time today, maybe there is a sort of a special feeling about it. But honestly, you cannot, miss rush hour traffic, surely. Those sort of things. Although I suppose some people have said that they use rush hour traffic as a mindfulness moment, in terms of what they listen to, and it's a de-stress and so on. So Helen, I'm going to abuse this webinar a little bit and I know neither you or I like coaching, but I kind of, and I'm being honest about this. This is not just a shtick to make this webinar work. I haven't got this right. And in the last 9 weeks, my default personality, and because I work for myself, that default personality is kicked in big time, is to get busy. So kind of, how do I respond when my diary was cleared 9 weeks ago and I saw all of my work for the rest of the year disappearing, my bank account along with it? It's like, okay, let's knuckle down. Let's do what I can do. Contact all of my clients, update my website, make sure I do the work I do, which is to understand how the world is changing, to look at disruptive trends, to build those out there. So I kind of just went into work mode, and luckily it worked, and people were interested in what I needed, in what I wanted to say. There was value for clients in listening, but I've basically been working 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day, which I can tell myself is a good thing, because it's better than the opposite problem of having nothing to do. But I've had 2 people in my close network have heart attacks in the last 2 weeks, and I'm convinced that in my network, more people are going to die of stress-related, or not die, but be hit with stress-related illnesses, which will ultimately head to cancer and things like that in the next few years, then will be impacted by COVID. So, I mean, this is not just a shtick to get the conversation going. I'm nervous for myself. What advice would you give for somebody who kind of knows the theory but hasn't practiced it in the last few weeks?
So a couple of practical things and I went on a program called the Corporate Athlete in Orlando, in Florida, around just after my tooth fairy incident. So I've been on a Google conference on mindfulness. I did the Corporate Athlete course, and all of the work now that we do is almost like a conglomeration, and then also of the practical things that I've been trying, because I battle as much as anyone with all of this. So Graeme, I think the big epiphany around busy and high-performing people is to realize that recovery is the secret source of high performance. And stress takes us into a high adrenaline, high place, and it serves us just like it served you. It kept your business going. We're designed to have adrenaline and cortisol course through our bodies and force us into that high performance state. But the big epiphany is that we're not supposed to stay there. We've got to oscillate in and out of stress and recovery.
Well, I mean, just beyond the epiphany of you're not supposed to stay there, I don't think you can stay there. Right. I mean, I think you just will collapse in a heap. I mean, the running energy is there. I was due to run the London Marathon. I was so excited. But the biggest thing I was training was to get my pacing right for the first 5 to 10 Ks, because I was so nervous of running out in the adrenaline. I know you've run the London Marathon, the adrenaline, the excitement of those, of that. I'm in London, I'm running the London Marathon. And my fear was that I'd, rush out of the blocks and then absolutely be murdered for the last 10 Ks. And that's probably what I've done with lockdown and COVID, is I've gone for 10 weeks, but if I don't pause now, if I don't slow down, I literally am going to fall over, I think.
No, and that's exactly it. So, I love words, and the analogy or the metaphor I'd like you to imagine is to imagine your day as a sentence. When is your full stop at the end of your day? And it's got to be a full stop. It can't be a comma or a semicolon or a whatever. It's got to be a full stop. And I can tell you, when I sit down on the couch with my husband and we have a whiskey, then I'm done for the day. I'll go onto social media a little bit, but I don't work at night. There's probably 3 times where there have been major crises. I made it a promise to myself. And what happened when I made that commitment is I sleep much better, because my body knows, just like children need bedtime routine, my body knows that when I sit on that couch, then the adrenaline starts to go. I actually can literally feel an exhaling. So in summer, we'll go and sit on a balcony and we have a drink. And in winter, we go downstairs, and that full stop then, and I actually close my laptop and I put it somewhere else. So it's quite a physical manifestation of that. So you've got to have a full stop at the end of your day. If you imagine your week as a paragraph, what recovery rituals do you have in place on the weekend to make, because what I find is often, and especially during this COVID time, is the weekends and the weeks are all just blurring in, So I wear very different clothes. So from Monday to Friday, I put on makeup, I do my hair, I dress in a more corporate way. And on the weekend, I don't. And so that's one thing. And then on a Friday night, and I mean, as people who've been through our work will know this, I have knickknacks, You Magazine, and a whiskey on a Friday night.
I've heard this You Magazine thing. Just you and the You Magazine, my head explodes, Helen. It's not my picture of you at all.
I wouldn't worry about it too much, Graeme. People have told me that the only girl I know that reads the Financial Times and You Magazine, and it makes me whole and robust.
But for you, is it part of a ritual? It's kind of because you kind of getting it's almost like you're giving permission to your body to say, I'm done. That's it for the week now, not just the day.
Exactly. And then on Friday night, it's almost like taking rituals from many religions, like the Jewish ritual of the Sabbath. We need a Sabbath. And so on a Saturday, I never, ever work at all. I don't touch one thing to do with work. And I don't care how busy I am, because I know that I'll catch up on the work on a Sunday, because then I've had that day to myself. And on a Saturday morning, I'll go for a run. I'll have coffee with my friends, kind of in a previous life, but now hopefully that will start again. And then I literally will watch a Netflix series, or I'll lie parallel and I read a book. So, and I put my phone somewhere else as well. So those rituals, the combination of layering of those, the more you can ritualize your recovery, the more likely it is to happen. It's got to be very specific behaviors. And then, monthly recovery. And I always say to people, never watch Carte Blanche on a Sunday night, because it's very bad for your recovery.
I agree with you. No, that's not a good way to. If you have to watch Carte Blanche, record it and watch it on Wednesday.
Yes, or just never watch it.
The right way to prepare for the week. Yeah.
Therefore, I see You Magazine versus Carte Blanche. I promise you, it's much better for one's mindfulness.
Fair enough.
And then, to have a monthly recovery. So if you imagine your book as a chapter at the end of the month, because often the only way people mark a month moving from month to month is through debit orders going through their account. That's how they know that stuff that's when you're moving. And so I have ritualized. So in a pre-COVID, I would have a facial or massage on the last Friday of every month. And I booked them for the year. So I've had to change them, but it meant the whole thing about recovery is you've got to take charge of it, because I can tell you that no one is coming to say, Graeme, you look a little bit tired, like maybe you should recover a little bit. There are very few people who are going to tell you that. And then yearly recovery, I think we've got to challenge that old-fashioned paradigm around taking a yearly holiday. the research is showing that we need to have these tiny, small breaks. And ideally, there should be 3 days.
Quarterly at least, yeah.
And I have a colleague, and he takes out one of those big desk calendars that comes out in September at the supermarkets every year. He puts it on their dining room table. He plots the public holidays for the following year, and then they go camping a lot. So they're not expensive, and he pays and books for nearly all of them before October. For the previous year. And I can tell you, 2 years ago, we wanted to go to Zanzibar over Easter. And I realized the whole of South Africa and its mother wanted to go to Zanzibar as well, because in January you could not get a flight, you could not get a holiday, you couldn't. So the next year, we booked and paid for it like in October. And I can't tell you what a wonderful feeling was. And I know you're good at this, arriving a year and already you've got your things booked out. And I don't think we must get away from that with COVID-19. Just because we can't travel, to different provinces or whatever, we've got to take recovery seriously. I mean, we did a thing at our house the other day where we made a drive-in outside in the garden. So I took a screen and we put a Proxima and we watched an Apple TV movie, and it was such fun, and so we've got to, and recovery is largely around trying to change your environment as well as much as possible.
So Kosi's asking a question which works for me as well, same problem. Surely what you, and now going, probably this is back to the daily and weekly rituals, I really struggle to switch my brain off. So my family's always thought I was very weird because I take the weirdest books on holiday, like history of the world and philosophy and things. So I'm not really into sort of reading novels and things, but it's not business related. But it is sort of really, really requires my brain to work. And the same would be if you were watching TV or a Netflix show. Because I just can't switch my brain off. So it's almost as if I've had to tell myself that I have to distract my brain with something else. Is that fine? Is that still mindfulness? It's not about emptying your mind of anything. It's just about creating a different ritual. Is that right?
Absolutely. And it's the same thing as I will, at the end of the day, I have a bath and I change my clothes. So the more you can do that, you're trying to change your state. And the things that help with that is, for example, bathing or showering, and they're also good for your sleep. And then also music, things like that, they can change your state very powerfully. So you want to put something in place that says, okay, now I'm done for the day. So I think the big challenge is just put in a full stop, and it's around a very specific behavior.
I love the idea of a full stop, because I don't have a full stop. I work, I don't need as much sleep as the rest of my family does. So I often will have dinner with the family and kind of then maybe even watch a show, sit and chat with my wife, and then I'll do another 2 or 3 hours work. And I think that's, maybe in a good time, I can convince myself that 2 or 3 nights a week, that's fine, because it's just me. But I think it's wiping me out at the moment. So what you're saying is not everybody has to do the same thing, but we have to think about this, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, and just on the sleep thing, is sleep is just, I mean, I did a session for a bunch of mainly over 50-year-old guys, probably 3 or 4 weeks before we'd even heard of COVID-19. And I remember leaving that session and getting into my car. None of them were sleeping. And one of them was about to have a heart attack. I mean, and I remember getting in my car thinking, I wonder where this is all going to end. And I actually think sleep deprivation is a bigger issue than climate change, because no one is sleeping. So I'm the Epsom salts and magnesium queen. So you need to have a bath, and you need to put a cup of Epsom salts in your bath because it relaxes you, and take 2 slow release magnesium tablets before you go to bed, because especially it helps you get to that deep sleep, because sleeping right now is a superpower. And I can tell you, I generally sleep very well, and even I've battled during this time because people are worried, about what's going to happen.
Yeah. So Nikki, a good friend of both of us, Nikki Abnall from Cape Town, is calling me out. Nikki, I think you have been on a few of my webinars. I did say to somebody a while ago that I've been pretty good about taking those regular breaks, and I often take long weekends and I take weeks away. And we had one due in 2 weeks' time, over the long weekend that was due to happen with June 16, and then we had another one in a week in the Berg. We always take 2 weeks off in either July or August. And if we go to level 2, we might even still be able to sneak that one in. So I'm not cancelling it quite yet, because it's in a self-contained chalet. And, so if we can get there, that'd be wonderful. But I have been thinking that it's blocked off in my diary as a week's holiday in the Drakensberg. And even if I can only take a holiday in the next room in the house, and I can't leave the house, I might still just say to my clients, I'm not available during that week. But it's really, I mean, honestly, Helen, it's been tough. I mean, you know what it's like as a self-employed or the founder boss of an organization. So right now, it's really tough to say no to anybody who wants to give you work, because everybody's only got a 2-week lead time. So my diary's empty for June and July, but it was absolutely cram-packed for May. So it's about getting the balance, right? That's all you're saying is be deliberate, be conscious, and take control of that balance and those rhythms.
You see, I think mindfulness is something that needs to be applied to us personally, to personally become more mindful. But I also think it's the way in which we approach our lives to live a more conscious life. And for me, that is the gift I would hope that everyone has taken out of COVID-19, because a client of mine spoke to me right at the beginning of this sparking joy. Marie Kondo, she's that Japanese lady who clears cupboards. She had a Netflix series. And this particular girl who told me the story, she was saying that they have applied the sparking joy philosophy in every area of their life. So, it's literally from the food that you eat, everything you touch. And she has these wonderful, go and have a look at her on YouTube, and she holds like a jersey and she kind of cradles it. And then she goes, does it feel like, or does it feel like, And that's such a wonderful, she's so sweet in her Japanese voice. So, and I think that is a really valuable thing, because it doesn't just apply to your clothes. I've ditched kind of half my wardrobe that I've donated. I went through our entire house. I spring cleaned. I tossed out, because I think that in the resetting of our lives, it's important that everything, so from your friendships to your kitchen to your finances, I even looked at our bank statements and I went through, like, do these things spark joy? It was hard to have medical aid spark joy, but it's these are these things that you
keeps you alive, at least.
Yeah, but it's just to consciously this consciousness of approaching your life. For me, I think it's Aristotle who said the only tragedy is an unexamined life, and is the opportunity of COVID-19.
So I know that you do quite a lot of work with corporate teams, and you speak both to bosses and employees, everybody throughout organizations. I'm in the lucky position where I really do have quite a lot of control. So if I say, I don't, literally, if I say I'm looking at my diary and I don't want to work next Monday and Tuesday, I can just block it off and say I'm not going to work. Not everybody's in that position. So if you're in an organization, if you're speaking to an organization, I know you've done work on mindfulness over the last few weeks with companies like Google and others. What do you say to somebody who's kind of sort of mid-range and maybe even lower in an organization that doesn't really have control over their time and all the rest? How do they practice mindfulness?
Yeah, I think that the 2 hours of the day that very few of us have obligations is between 5 and 7 in the morning. So that is the time to take that as your mindfulness time. And, I believe the way in which you can make mindfulness practical for all of us in business and in teams is through deep work, or this concept of deep work. And I don't know if any of you have ever read the book by Cal Newport. For me, it was a complete game changer, because what he says is you need to incorporate one period of 90 minutes deep work every day. And he does 3 or 4. But, as you say, a lot of us don't have control of our time and our diaries. So deep work means when you're sitting and you're doing an Excel spreadsheet or you're doing one task, You switch off your email notifications, you switch off your phone, and you do that one thing for 90 minutes. And what happens is your product, by the end of the day, because I think pre-COVID-19, there was a lot of people who get to the end of the day and you've been busy all day, but you're constantly task switching. It's this, because even, that your attention goes off for 11 minutes if you just see an email, even if you didn't go and click on it, just you sent it and you sent the subject line, because that then sends your mind on that whole kind of rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And so that is a very practical way that no matter where you are in an organization, if you can try, and that's why open plan offices have been so bad for so many people around deep work, because they needed to actually often go and take themselves separately, and go off and go and do that deep quality productive.
So Helen, do you think that some people might discover that working from home, and we need to be careful, this is some of the work that I do, not everybody's getting the best work from home experience. A lot of people are working through a crisis while stuck at home. That's different from working from home. But if you can set yourself up to work from home, do you think some people might discover it's actually better for them? They're not being distracted by the office around them. They're not stuck in traffic to get to and from the office. They might be able, if they say, this is what I have to do for the next few months, maybe they can design a space that's a lot more focused.
Absolutely. I can already see it in my team. Our office manager, she comes into the office on a Monday and a Friday. She's got small children at home, and she's found a way that makes it work. And she's much happier working Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at home, and dialing in when she needs to. And I can just see that, especially for people with children who, she has found that, and I mean, the reality is I did a session with Nikki Bush the other day, who's a parenting expert, and she said that you can't do deep work when your children are under the age of 10, unless they're asleep, which was quite a sad,
Fair enough.
Yes, which makes sense. But then you adjust your schedule around it. So in other words, when you're with your children, be with your children. Because one of the things, and I mean, this, anyone who's got slightly older children knows that these are precious times, and don't miss out. Rather do the deep work between 5 and 7 before they wake up in the morning, and, if they have a nap, and then later on. If you can fit in 2 deep work periods, your productivity, I can tell you, will be the same, if not better, than when you were in an open plan office working for 7 or 8 hours.
And so that leads nicely to a question Chanda's asked, and it also fits into mine. And I'm realizing, look, luckily, I mean, lockdown isn't over, but even with the easing up, this disruption is going to last for many, many months. So luckily, I've got time to turn this around. And my daughters, who are supposed to be jolling it up at varsity without their parents, are kind of, a few rooms down. But we can do better. Chanda asks, what are some of the things a family could do, or a group of people who may be locked down together? Are there rituals and mindfulness things you can do together as groups, or is it an individual thing?
No, they definitely, I think you can adopt many mindfulness techniques, and a lot of them can be around eating. Eating should never happen with a screen. So whenever you eat with your, and for me, I have religiously taken a break, especially when I was full-time at home and not going into the office, in that initial stage of lockdown, is going upstairs and sitting outside for 20 minutes and getting sun on my face. I mean, we have amazing weather in Joburg, and when you're in an office, you never notice that. So having a lunch outside every single day, and at night you sit down at a table with proper knives and proper forks, and you don't eat in front of the TV. So because then people taste, there's a lot of linkages between mindfulness and mindful eating and weight loss. Because what they're saying is when you actually taste your food, then you don't overeat, because you're very conscious of the taste. That's why, for example, you very seldom see, overweight Italians, because they eat mindfully. They it's the whole family around a table. They make an occasion of it. And for me, I'm a big believer in having occasions. I have a Thanksgiving dinner for my friends once a year, that people gather around a table and we eat and we give thanks. And those are the rituals, I think, that, and especially in this time, I think that we'll remember and hold on to.
Well, if my family ever watched this, I told them that we should do fancy Fridays all the way through lockdown, and we haven't done them once. I thought, get dressed up on a Friday night, do it up a little bit, but no. So maybe I'm going to go back and push that a little bit.
Remember, the girls, they come back after 22. So up until then, they're still slightly a little bit user-friendly.
You keep giving me hope with that. Michelle asks, and we are coming to the end, folks, so if you do have some questions for Helen, throw them in. Michelle asks, can you do this mindfulness while you're running or cycling in the morning? I know you're big into sort of those early morning walks and runs and so on.
Yeah, I think it depends how you would define deep work. Typically, if you go by the traditional definition, is something productive that you do, whereas deep thinking would be something separate. I'm a huge believer in deep work, and I run as well. I chat when I run, and I listen to music often. But that ability, you see, one of the most interesting.
Just had a little bit of a buffering there. I don't know if it was you or me. Do you want to just repeat that in case we didn't get it?
Okay, what I was saying is, there's a lot of neuroscience around your brain saying that our brains are not designed to be on all the time. Effectively, it's like we've taken our brains, especially our children's brains, and put them on a pressure cooker, and we've just kept it on boil, because no one is ever allowed just to sit and think. And what's happening is the lack of daydreaming and thinking is affecting our ability to problem solve. So, Michelle, it's a long answer to your question, but I think you can do deep thinking in the morning, running and cycling. And if you want to do deep work, then, it depends what that deep work is. Then that 90 minutes, but it's just no distraction work. And I have found it a productivity game changer and also a happiness game changer.
Yeah. Helen, we could chat about this all day. I think it's fascinating. I needed the reminder. You and I have chatted about this many times, but I just needed the reminder that we can't get lost in this COVID crisis. We could lose ourselves. We could lose relationships. We could lose family. We could lose health, not just COVID health, but general health. And mindfulness really is one of the secrets to getting us out the other side. In a healthy way.
Sorry, Graeme, just last point for me is I think a lot of the COVID discussions are focusing on the wrong thing, where I think we should be focusing on how we can develop our own immunity, and mindfulness plays a role in that. Because when you don't sleep properly, you lose 30% of your immunity. When you are stressed, that compromises your immunity. And I'm really interested in those conversations, because those are things that I can control. They are literally within my own control on a daily basis. And
Yes.
and I think we need to focus more on the immunity conversation than on the stuff that we can't control.
Great points. Final question. Who was the author of the Deep Work book you mentioned, Helen?
It's a guy called Cal, C-A-L, Newport, N-E-W-P-O-R-T. And he's
Perfect.
written another one, Digital Minimalism, which is also highly recommended.
Awesome. So listen, if you want to get hold of Helen, if you're live with us now, I've put her company's website address into the chat. Otherwise, if you're watching a replay, I'll put it into the notes. It's Helen Nicholson, thenetworkingcompany.co.za, thenetworkingcompany.co.za, or just search for Helen Nicholson on all of your platforms, on LinkedIn and all the rest, to connect in with her directly. Helen, I know this is something that you can do and do for companies, for organizations. And so if anybody's interested in making sure that your team is being mindful, keeping their health and their focus and their engagement with the world around them in the right place. I mean, Helen just has a wonderful way of making it real. She's not just bringing it in from a woo-woo, I've read a book, I found something. I mean, she's a business person who works hard, runs it, family, single mom, raising twins. So she knows what she's talking about when she says you can and should do this, even when it's busy and tough. Helen, let me leave the last word to you. What haven't we said, or what needs to be said again as we finish our conversation?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite quotes is, for those of you who remember when Kwalani Gwala died last year, and I think it was 46 of brain cancer. And he said, and he was paraphrasing, but you have two lives, or we have one life, and let me get it right. We have two lives. The second one starts when we realize we only have one. Does that sound right?
That's right. That's right. I think you got it. Yes.
And I think that, it really, life is short, and the quality of our everyday interaction is enhanced by gratitude, mindfulness, stop multitasking, and be present. Because at the end of the day, the biggest gift you give to people is the gift of your attention.
Helen, I knew this would be a good session. I knew that you were the right person to have this conversation with. Thank you. It's felt a little bit like a therapy session for me, more than just a conversation.
Hardly a therapy session, but I'm
we all need to be reminded. The point is, we all need to be reminded of this. This is not a sprint. We've got to get through this. Yeah. Sorry, Helen, yeah. No, exactly. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Helen, thank you again for your time, for your wisdom, for your insights, for your friendship as well. Look forward to being able to join you sometime on that balcony in the sun when we're allowed to, and having a drink together. And I'm not sure you can ever convince me that reading the You magazine is a good idea, but I'll come and share your knickknacks.
And whiskey. Then it gets much better.
That we can do. That we can do. Thanks, Helen. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. It's great having you.
Thank you.
Cheers.